Thank you so much for coming to speak to me, but also to many other people online. Obviously, you've dedicated your life to learning and teaching the sciences. But what do you think a pursuit of science and technology can offer a young person?
Difficult question. I suppose the answer is what science can do is it enables one to know. I mean, young people wandering around, they often wonder, or, why does that happen or how does that happen? Now, if you've studied science, it enables you to know with certainty. Can I give you an example? If I look out the window now, I can see the sky is blue. I know why the sky is blue because I have science and you have science, and we can talk about tindal scattering, so we know why the sky is blue. Now, if you look at, let's say, a painting by Turner, and you'll see the sky is that, but you can wonder, why did he paint it that color blue? But you can't say the certainty as to why he painted that blue, but I know why the sky is blue. So that's the kind of the difference.
Do you remember like a moment when you were younger that you suddenly became interested in science?
Well, what I do remember is I remember as a child, when I was a child, which was an awful long time ago, I used to get presents from my dad at Christmas and my birthday. And I remember getting a little electrical sets, and I used to do things with electrical sets. And I remember he gave me a chemistry set as well, which I remember had one disastrous effect in my bedroom, but we won't talk about that. I had a train, one of these windy up toy trains, but a friend of mine had a beautiful electrical set, magnificent set, which he had set up in a room in his home. And he said, could we put lights on the station? So I built stations out of Meccano, and I put lights on them, and I wired them to his electrical one. And I wired it in such a way that when the train came into the station, the lights in the station went up. And then as the train moved out, the lights went down. And it was much years later, I was trying to figure out how the heck did I do that? But that was just an example of being involved with science. So I suppose my dad was one, if you like, put science in front of me. And then I was very fortunate that I went to a school with fantastic science teachers and ones that inspired me to try to become a scientist. I haven't reached there yet.
Yeah, so a trip to New Mexico was what led you to co-found the Young Scientists exhibition back in 1963.
That's right, yeah.
Can you explain how that came about?
Father Burke and myself were doing research in atmospheric physics, and it was a tradition in the physics department. Atmospheric physics had been going there for 50, 60, 70 years probably. And we had my own professors and Father Tom's Professor Nolan, with a man called Pollock, devised a device for measuring or counting the aerosols, the little particles that are in the air on which water vapor condenses. We called it a nucleus counter. And the people in this university, University of Mexico, they wanted a copy of this instrument. Father Tom went out first of all, and he sent me a letter saying there was a young boy here who had built a rocket. And when you come out to join me, we'll look at this rocket. So this little chap, whose name was Gary, he had built this rocket, and he demonstrated it. And I took photographs, which we still have, of Father Burke looking at the rocket and me obviously taking the photograph. And safety and health didn't seem to come into it because we were standing there while the blooming thing went up. But we asked him why was he doing it. And he said he was doing it for a science fair. Now, a science fair meant nothing to me. I don't know about Father Tom, but didn't mean anything to me. But he told us there was a science fair going on in Albuquerque in a month's time or something like that. And he told us a bit about this competition. So Father Tom went to it. And when we came back to UCD at the end of September, he started telling me about this. And we wondered, would it be possible to start it here in Ireland? And the reason we felt we needed to do something about this was that at that stage, science hadn't got the the profile that it has nowadays. And we wanted to encourage young people to do science. So we thought, well, maybe this idea of a science fair or a young scientist exhibition, as we prefer to call it, might be the answer. And that was where we got the spark of the idea. And then, of course, there was a lot of work going to get it. We had to get a sponsor, first of all, which we did. And then we had the first one in 1965, which I still remember. It was, compared to the sophistication of today's ones, I mean, it's amazing. But interesting, as you know, Emer, one of the first winner comes over to judge the young scientists every year, John Monaghan, a great man, and a great believer. He flies himself, not flies himself, flies in a plane, obviously, as a passenger, and comes over and judges for us every year. And I think that's a measure of the influence science had on him and in his career and what he wants to put back into it.
What do you think? Obviously, you talked about the first competition back in '65, but what do you think has made the exhibition, I guess, like stand the test of time, and that it has kept growing and kept going?
So it's very much centered on the young person or the young people themselves, and it's up for them to explore what they're trying to find out, you know. And I think it's because it's surrounded by the young people themselves and the interaction of the young people in the RDS at the science fair every year, science exhibition every year. I think that's the inspiration for it. I mean, you should be answering the question yourself, because why did you take part?
Why did I take part?
Yeah.
Well, I took part because I really wanted to be creative with science. I felt like learning just from the textbook, I wasn't as excited by it. So I really wanted to do something outside of the curriculum, and definitely that was what got me interested in science. And I mean, it's why I'm doing a PhD now. It's from doing the young scientist experiments. So
you had an interest in it, and that's the interest. You dangle something in front of young people, and they try to wonder why or how or explore for themselves.
Yeah, and it's to be able to be creative. Like, you can actually, people don't think that science is that creative. Let's say it's not like painting, but you can be so creative in science once you have like a hypothesis. It's up to you to, I guess, create a way to prove it or disprove it. How does it make you feel seeing how far some previous BT Young Scientist participants have come, or how far like winners have come? Like, how does that make you feel?
Well, I'm in awe of them, first of all, and I'm sure I speak for the late Father Tom and myself. We're delighted that that the Young Scientist exhibition gave them an opportunity to discover science, to develop their interest, their great interest in science, and then to go on and do research and higher degrees. And some of them have made very good companies, out of what they learned in the Young Scientists.
And I'm sure they have a lot to thank you for as well, seeing as you
No. It's all on the student. It's not on us.
But you helped inspire it, so.
Well, we gave them the opportunity, but they did the work themselves. I wasn't able to. We weren't able to go around and beat a child into saying, "Come on, you've got to do a Young Scientist exhibition." The inspiration has to come from them. The interest has to come from them, and the carrying out of the work has to come from them.
Yeah. Now, this is something about you that I wasn't aware about, but you developed the smoke alarm with your research student, Dr. Mike Byrne. And then since then, over 80 million have been made. And so, it has literally impacted the world. But can you speak to how, working with science and technology has the ability to have much wider impact? Like, what's your experience with that?
Well, the story in itself is interesting. The idea of a smoke alarm had been around for a little while. And the company called General Electric had a branch in Shannon. And it was given to that company in Shannon. It was called the EI company in Shannon. And they were given the job of bringing the smoke alarm, the original design of the smoke alarm to the market. But they couldn't quite get it to work. And somehow or other, the chief executive there obviously heard of me. I don't know how he did. But anyway, he heard of me, and he contacted me, and two of them came up to talk to me in my lab, and asked, could we get this early prototype that they had, which was a bit unwieldy, into a more compact model. Now, I think the reason we could help was that in the research group for the Tom and myself were in atmospheric physics, there was a great tradition of doing basic research. So I knew a bit about the aerosols, which I mentioned to you earlier, and aerosols and ions interact with each other, and how they interact and behave, and their thing called their mobility, in other words, the speed in which they move in an electric field. We knew a bit about the theory of it. And then Mike Byrne was my research student. He was just finishing his PhD at the time. And they came to see, can we do this? Can we get this simplified? This simplified is not the right word, but it'll do. Get this model into a working model. Mm-hmm. And so Mike was in the lab in UCD in the physics department. And we looked at the problem, and then we applied the knowledge that we had from 50, 60 years of research in the department. And we applied that to this, and we developed this within, I think, 5 or 6 weeks. We had cracked the problem. And then this was a working model. And so we had to go down then to Shannon and get a prototype built. And I think that figure 80 million is not quite right. I think it's well over 200 million have been made. And there's a company down in Shannon now that I think they employ about 700 to 800 people building smoke alarms.
Wow.
And that company now has a turnover of, I gather, about 300 million a year.
Wow. That's so impressive. Right. Wow. What breakthrough in science recently has excited you the most? Is there anything happening in science at the moment that excites you?
Oh gosh, there's so much excites me. I mean, I suppose the most relevant one at the moment is the development of a cure, if that's the right word, or a vaccine that will help us get over this blooming COVID-19 problem. And again, it shows you that if you can get a group of scientists working together in a single way and applying all the basic knowledge that they had about, I mean, the gene structure of the virus itself, and how they can penetrate that and how they can modify that. And that is now, okay, biology is a little bit beyond me, and chemistry I can manage, but the amount of work that has done, and the fact they were able to do it in about 6 to 8 months is absolutely amazing.
I think it highlights really the importance of collaboration as well, because it's been very much cross-disciplinary. So it's not just the biologists, it's everyone. Yeah. If you had advice for this year's applicants and participants, what would it be?
I always ask the students when I go and sit down beside them, or used to sit down beside them, not this year, I always ask them this 3 simple questions. What did you set out to do? How did you do it? And what did you find? And it's like a story. It has a beginning, which is your idea, has a middle, it's the work you've done on it, and it has an end, it's what you discovered. So what I'd always advise people is, if you get an idea, go and explore it and try and get help to advise you. But try and make sure that you, when you put that thing on display virtually this year, or in the RDS in the real world, in the real way, that you have completed, you've tied all the edges together so that you have a complete package. Mm. You did a lot of work after you did the Young Scientist, didn't you? You with Chagas and people like that.
Yeah.
I should be asking you questions, not you asking me.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to ask for help if they need it, and advice. That would be one of my biggest things.
Well, the thing is, of course, not only ask for help, but where can you get help? Mm. And this is where I think the teachers plays such an important role.
I remember we found as well it was very easy to get help because, especially from kind of researchers in universities, even just for advice via email, because everyone knew what the BT Young Scientist was. So people were very willing to point you in the right direction or send you a research paper you might need. So yeah, it's just reaching out really.
The main thing again for these young people doing the thing is to write everything down.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't work, so that when you go back to look at it the next day or a couple of days or in a week's time, you can flick back over the pages and see, I tried that and it didn't work, or I tried that and it did work. So it's very important to record what you're doing.
That is all the questions that I have. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
One of my great joys and happiness is meeting new people again, because as you know, you're as one of the winners, you come back and help us during the year. And I love meeting all the people from the previous winners, from John Monaghan in 1965 down to you. You were 2003, were you?
2013?
Yeah, 2013. But I mean, it's lovely meeting you all together. And the great thing I hope it gets through, that we meet as equals. We meet as friends who have a common interest.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the best things I got out of the whole experience. Is I have a lot of friends that I've met through the BT Young Scientists. Like you said, all the past winners, we meet up every year, but we'd be in contact all throughout the year as well. And it's kind of like a little family, really. And even just people that I participated alongside back when I was like 14, 15, I'm still in contact with some of them too. And like you said, it's people with a common interest, people who are just interested in science, in all aspects of science, and also in promoting young people's involvement in science. So yeah, it's definitely one of the best things that I got out of it. And I got friends like you out of it as well. So, you know.
We're going to learn from this, what we're doing this year, certainly. And we may be able to apply some of the things we did this year back to when we get back to the RDS, hopefully 2022.
Amazing.
That is, if you like, in a nutshell, is the history of the Young Scientist. 1963 to 2021 as of now, and the years ahead. Whether it'll keep going, it will keep going, because it's a tribute to the schools, to the parents, to the teachers, and to the sponsors in this country that we've been able to do it. Because without those four people, those four groups, it wouldn't happen. So that's the Young Scientist.